The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. So thrilled to be here with you on this Wednesday morning because on Wednesdays we have the opportunity to bring you Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh graces us with her presence to answer your questions live in real time, and we all learn when she's here. So very excited about that. We don't want to delay much, but I want to remind you that there are many different ways that you can participate in the conversation here. This entire show is meant to be completely interactive. Emily's going to cycle through some of the ways that you can get a hold of us here in the studio, and I'm going to remind you that there's only one way to watch us live. That's at www.autism-live.com. When you go there, there is a white box. We're now leaving it open 24 hours a day, so no matter when you visit, you'll see something playing there, right? Because the show airs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're only live at 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time here in the United States, 10 a.m. to noon Pacific Time. And during that time, you can interact with us in real time. But the rest of the time, if you have a question, you can type it in, hit enter, and we will address it in the next live show. Throughout the night, you guys brought in a lot of questions. I'm very excited to talk with Dr. Granpeesheh about them. We've also gotten some emails, and thrilled that we'll have an opportunity to address that as well. But it's not too late for you to add your question to the mix. Without further ado, it's time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism, and now you get to ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the studio Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Shannon. It's always lovely to be here.
Well, it's so exciting for me to have an opportunity to listen to what you have to say on a weekly basis. I'm learning so much. And I know that our viewers believe that, and we're getting more and more questions. And we're going to start this morning by reminding everybody that we don't give, and that you don't give child-specific advice here on the show. You can't. Even if you provide us with a great deal of information, it's still not the same thing as being able to observe a child and having access to all the questions that you would like to ask with the child there, right?
Right, and also, I mean, one of the families that we will try to help today has written in a lot of detail.
Very extensive.
3 pages of detail, but it's difficult to give any kind of advice, obviously, because normally if I had the child here and the parents here, I would have dialogue, asking a lot of questions. Plus, also, a lot of things that I would do just based on reading this much detail is it kind of, it's sort of like solving a puzzle of what has happened and where do I need to test.
Yeah.
So it's not like I can give a lot of advice, but I can at least tell the family what areas they need to get assessed and so on. So that'll be more specific.
Well, and we want to start out with an email that came in over the night, and what was sort of really exciting for me this morning is that you came in and I gave you this very lengthy email, and to watch you work was fascinating. Well, to see a passionate, driven, really knowledgeable expert sit down and to see you making notes and how focused and driven you were was just very exciting to watch.
Well, it's just that first I looked at it and I was like, okay, this is 3 pages. If I read through this, we won't make it, because I get in here like 5 minutes before the show.
I mean, I gave you minutes.
But then once I started reading it, I noticed that there's just some key things, and I think this parent, this dad who's written in, just wants a little bit of advice in terms of organizing the things he has to do. And I think, so then I said to you, actually, I think I can help, so let me just respond to some of this.
And a little background, so this email came in, and it's a lengthy 3-page email, so we're not going to read the whole thing to you, but a parent who is living in Alabama asked for some advice about a 4-year-old child, correct?
4-year-old child, that's right. And I guess the child had been in a special needs preschool for about a year, but didn't really make progress.
And does not yet have an autism diagnosis, correct?
Right, that's right. And they are about to get a diagnosis, I believe, coming up in July, and it sounds like they will have insurance coverage for a full ABA program.
If in fact they get that.
I wasn't aware that Alabama actually has that. But
I wasn't, but I guess it depends on your individual insurance company.
Well, yeah, I just didn't realize that Alabama is already one of the mandated states. So,
and I'll have to check on that to make sure of that.
It sounds like it is.
Okay, and so, but that will be dependent upon them getting a diagnosis. And if the diagnosis is happening on July 1st, then can we assume that the new criteria would be in use for that, or we don't want to assume?
That's a good point. Probably. I mean, if it's Alabama, so I'm not sure how.
Right.
We haven't really even started using it here yet, just because I think most of us are waiting for the actual manual to come out.
Yeah.
And it hasn't come out yet. It was supposed to be released in May, but it hasn't been printed yet. So, but Amazon we've all pre-ordered.
Right.
So it should be coming out any minute now.
Okay.
And I would imagine that by July, you're looking at the new criteria.
Okay.
And that's going to be an interesting challenge for everyone as well, just
really
because the title will change, ASD, and I don't know how insurance, I'm assuming insurance companies will just go ahead and cover with an ASD diagnosis.
Well, and that was a part of the original lawmaking that they kind of thought ahead, but it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes down.
Right.
Okay, so in looking at this, if we pull out some salient points for this parent.
Just a few things, because the parent refers to the fact that they're in Alabama and that they expect to have a long wait time or not sure where they're going to get services and all that. So, that's one of the things where I feel like after you get the diagnosis, first of all, I always tell people, if you'd like to come here and to California, I'm happy to do your assessment and diagnosis. So that's not a problem. I can actually do that in multiple other states that I'm licensed as well, but here is where I have my assessment team and all the tests, and so we can administer tests, and I can easily do a 2-hour assessment or diagnosis with you myself.
And I can tell you that, you've said that before, and you've done that. Parents that have heard that on the show have said, okay, so Dr. Granpeesheh, I'm coming, do you mean it? And she has meant it and followed through on it, which is kind of incredible.
The thing is, though, that it sounds like this child already has an appointment July 1st, and if I was to get an appointment in right now, it would be more like, I don't know, October or something. So it's better to get the diagnosis. And then in terms of getting services, I feel that if you don't have a quality ABA provider out there, we will help you with that. But that's our remote services, and we can help with that because we have supervisors who will be going to the southern states, everywhere, and they will hire and train local people so that the insurance will cover your services through us, and the supervisor will come back and forth and will also watch the services on Skype or something similar to Skype, and will be able to guide. So we've done that a lot for insurance companies. We continue to do that. We have programs that have run in that fashion for 2, 3, 4 years. I have recovered kids from those types of what we used to call workshops, and now they're called remote services. So that is one area that CARD could help you.
Okay.
And we're just about to open an office, I think in hopefully 2 months or so, in the Baton Rouge area.
Really?
So we will be in that general area and able to help. So that's one thing. The other thing is that if your insurance, if you are covered, your insurance is not just going to pay for direct ABA, they will also pay for assessments. Because there's some mention of, I'm not sure we can afford any tests or treatments. Your insurance first pays for assessments, and then will, then based on the assessments, reports are written and recommendations are made on the hours of therapy that your child would benefit from. So you should get all of that from your insurance. Now, I'm talking psychological as well as medical.
Right.
And especially because your diagnosis is in July, that's kind of a good thing, because the way that you diagnose with the new criteria, the medical issues become, I don't want to say like more obvious, but they're part of the diagnosis. You mention the medical issues, and your child certainly does have a lot of medical issues, so it would be very important, extremely important, that the medical issues are written in the report when the initial diagnosis is done.
Okay.
And the way that we diagnose, there's 5 axes. So the first axis is where you put the autism diagnosis. The second axis, second is sort of more like chronic long-term type personality disorders. Third axis is medical disorders.
Okay.
So, and a lot of psychologists, when they diagnose, they just ignore the whole 5-axis thing. But if you're using insurance, you have to use the 5-axis.
Okay.
And therefore, on the third axis, which is just the third line, the person diagnosing would want to list a lot of these medical issues that you've listed here. And just so you know, most insurance companies, when they see additional medical issues, will fund higher. So this is an important thing for you to do. The next thing is just reading some of the symptoms that you mentioned, like had recurring ear infections, has tubes in now, you know, wakes up yelling, laughing, running around in the middle of the night. Those types of symptoms would alert me to want to test for yeast. And it's just reading some other things as well, it sounds like there's you also have recurring yeast rashes, and
there's eczema, there's laughing.
Eczema, there's all the loose stools and all this sort of stuff, and really, you need to have someone who's more of an expert in the field of autism do testing. You definitely have a large number of allergic foods that you've listed here for your child, and when you have that many allergies, or what comes up on an allergy test that's positive, that doesn't really mean that your child's allergic to these things. It means that your child's immune system is overreacting, and that makes a lot of sense, because on another page you had written that he had normal progression until about 18 months. And a lot of times our kids start to go into that sort of hyperimmune reaction phase around that time, just because they're immunized. And not that the immunization is causing the autism, but the immunization is affecting your child's immune system.
Right.
You know, when we get immunized, of course, the concept is we're going to give you a very small amount of the disease, whatever it is.
Right.
At 18 months is the MMRs, actually, mumps, measles, and rubella. And that is supposed to increase your child's immune reaction to those particular things, so that your child, when exposed in the future, won't catch them.
Right.
Sometimes with kids, what happens is it just dysregulates their entire immune system, and they start to react to everything.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's possible in your case because of all the other things that you've written here. So I would really recommend that you look on the website for MAPS, M-A-P-S, and MAPS.
And it's medmaps.org.
Okay, great.
medmaps.org.
Terrific. And that's sort of the replacement for what used to be called the Autism Research Institute, or DAN Doctors. And it's, I guess the doctor who founded it is Dr. Dan Rosignol, and he's very good. He's out here, I think, in California now, but they have physicians all over the country who've gone through their training, and sometimes the physicians will tend to do things that are not necessarily, you know, scientific background or those types of things. But having said that, these are the guys that really understand autism, and what they're trying to do is not that they're trying to do unscientific things. They're trying to go above and beyond in order to figure this thing out.
Right.
Really, they're trying to push the borders and just like figure out what your child needs. I can tell you right now that a traditional allergist or a traditional pediatrician will not deal with all these things.
Right.
And there's so many things happening here that are very typical of a child whose immune reaction is reacting, let's say, that this is the typical thing that our MAPS doctors do deal with. And so I would really, those are the things I can suggest. The only other thing, so I would say, you know, first of all, get a diagnosis, which any of the MAPS doctors who are pediatricians should be able to diagnose as well, although you do have an appointment. So make sure you get that. Contact a MAPS physician, get a series of tests done, and you're going to be asking for tests to identify yeast. And I read that you've changed the diet, but I'm not sure what you've changed it to. But anyway, you will need to talk to also a nutritionist. And, you know, we've had, of course, Julie Matthews on this show a few times.
She's amazing.
Julie is fabulous. I don't know if she can reach out to you in Alabama. You may want to contact Julie anyway and see what help she can offer.
She does consultation around the world.
Terrific.
So her website is nourishinghope.com.
Great.
So you can go there.
So we have the MAPS website and we have Nourishing Hope.
Yes.
And so those two things will kind of help stabilize the medical a little bit. As far as the behavioral stuff, when you have this much these many medical issues going on, the child's not really feeling all that well. There's a lot of, you know, stuff going on inside, and so I wouldn't want to expect him right now to calm down right away until you get some of the medical issues under control. There is some behavioral stuff happening, which is sort of attention seeking and yelling and banging for attention and so on. And you know, that's bound to happen until you get a very good behavioral program in the house. The main thing is that you wrote he does well with the PEC system. Please infuse his entire life with the PEC system. Yeah. Put it everywhere, in every environment. Yeah. Make sure he has a little PECS book with him, or if he's able to, a lot of our kids now transfer just to the iPad. Yeah. And we put the Proloquo on there, and it just allows them to go that direction. But the more he can use his PEC system to communicate his needs, the lower these behaviors will be. So when we yell or scream or something, we want to escape a situation, you've listed some of those, or we want to gain attention and so on. If it's just as easy or easier to use a PEC system, and actually the PEC system becomes effective, like you pick something and someone gives it to you, and what you pick could be a break, I want to do something else, any of those things, the PEC system will replace the behavior. So this is the best I can do right now. You've listed some pretty good reinforcers. He likes swinging and all that sort of stuff. And so I would say you really need to, and you've written that he's a gentle and sweet kid. So let me tell you for sure, if he's doing all these other behaviors, he's not feeling well. Yeah. So, let's try to get him feeling better, and then hopefully we get a good behavioral program in place, and that'll take care of things. He is very young, so the good thing with that is that, you still have a lot of good opportunity ahead of you.
Absolutely.
Just hang in there. It's really tough. I can understand reading all of this. It's one on top of another, and it's chaos. I can totally get it.
And then I usually recommend for people who, when they're in that in-between phase, while they're waiting for assessments and waiting to start services, I encourage them to do IBT training.
That's right.
Get as educated as you can, because you can be doing it in little increments, a half hour here, an hour there. That's Institute for Behavior Training. It will pay off.
And it's so affordable, $10 or $12.
It's as low as $7.50 for some of the trainings.
Right. And once you go on there, you'll go in the parent section, and there's a ton of different trainings. And, you just purchase one, and then you can go through it. And it's a video, and it's, one of our senior supervisors, actually, our training group, the IBT training group, is everyone very, very, very senior at CARD. So they've been with me for, almost 20 years, some of these guys. So they're very experienced, and they know what they're talking about. They're all behavior analysts, and they all understand the interaction, I guess, of sensory issues and medical issues with behavior. So please do access IBT. It helps a lot when
they're
you
very
understand.
targeted to different topics.
Very targeted, right.
So that when you're thinking, okay, what do I do about a tantrum? And you go in and somebody wants to talk to you about ABA, and sometimes they start with something else other than how do I deal with a tantrum. These are really targeted so that if you're having issues with something, you can say, all right, this is where I need to start. And it allows you to come in there. I think they're wonderful.
Thank you.
A lot of times they were filming them here in the studio, and so I would be outside in the control room, and I hated to go pick up my child from school who I adore and can't wait to see, but I was hanging on the edge of my chair listening as they were filming to the great information that they were imparting. So that's Institute for Behavior Training. It's ibehaviortraining.com. Okay, we should take a short break, and then we're going to come back. We have some follow-up questions about last week, you talking about the new criteria, and some questions about skills, actually. So we're going to come back with those after these messages.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. Our very special guest, Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, is here answering your questions. You still have time. You can be writing them in. We have a bunch of questions, but that's okay. We store them for future dates. In any case, a follow-up question from last week. Somebody wants to know, does an IQ score have anything to do with the new DSM V when it comes to diagnosis?
You know, and that's a really good question. Gosh, the only place that it will come in is that it becomes one of the sort of specifiers or modifiers, and you can say, ASD with intellectual disability or something like that. But it doesn't have anything to do with the actual diagnosis itself. And in fact, what's very important is that in California, we were having a situation gradually where insurance companies were reducing funding for our children who had delayed IQ scores or low IQ scores. And we were battling that for a long time because people don't realize that our kids, yes, clearly some of them have some delays in intelligence, but most of our kids just score delayed on a test, and that's because most of the tests are verbal. Like, we're giving verbal instructions and we're expecting verbal responses. So I don't know how our kids are expected to respond to that. If they could respond to that, then they wouldn't have any language issues, you know. So the tests are not appropriate. So, and it always shocks me when I have a child who's tested somewhere with a verbal IQ test, and then they come in here and we give them a nonverbal IQ test, the test that you use for hearing impaired kids, and then their IQ is like 50 points higher, you know. So it tells you that the administration of an IQ test is not really appropriate for our kids. So then what happened recently here was we had a lot of cases in California where the parents were the case was getting cut, the funding, due to a low IQ, and we were sending all these, and a lot of other people were too. Parents were sending these to Department of Insurance, Department of Mental Health Care, and they came back with an emergency sort of notice for California, which I'm pretty sure would be everywhere, to the insurance companies saying you cannot use IQ as a reason to reduce funding, which I think is awesome. I mean, absolutely. I really think that's very good. And so don't worry about IQ. IQ is permeable. It changes with what you learn. So that's a really, really important thing to remember.
Awesome. Great question here. Dr. Doreen, have you ever thought of putting skills out there as an app for the iPad, thinking it might be helpful when you don't have access to a computer? Because a lot of people now are moving from their computers to their pads.
That's
is that
right.
something that is under consideration?
Well, so what we have right now, and I really appreciate that feedback actually, and if the person who's writing hopefully is listening to this as well, if you have any further ideas about how that would work, I would love to hear your thoughts. So please feel free to email me about that.
Okay.
And I always say my email is doreen@centerforautism.com. So I have no problem. I love receiving emails from parents instead of my 400 management emails that I receive every day. So,
all right.
But what I wanted to say is that for our own system, our therapists internally at CARD have iPads, and their iPads do a variety of different things, including capture data. We're just in the phase of we keep rolling out new features to the iPads, and some of our therapists now already are using the data collection feature, which is terrific. I love it. So it captures sort of correct response to various programs as well as behaviors, frequency of behaviors. And those come from and feed into skills. So let's say you are using skills and you pick a series of lessons for your child. In our internal CARD system, when a supervisor picks lessons, it'll automatically be fed to the iPads of the therapists for that child.
Amazing.
So the therapist receives the new information automatically, is taking data on it, and then when they put new data in, it feeds back into the child's skills program. So internally, what we're doing with skills is expanding it more and more so that it just becomes our clinical database overall, because all of our kids are in there and all of our kids have data in there. We're adding a lot of features to skills, like now we have a specific type of report for every funding agency, which is going to be awesome.
Right.
And it's automatically generated from the child's data, so it reduces the supervisor's time. And it also now, of course, some people will be familiar with this section we have called the BIP Builder. And that's sort of, you answer a bunch of, and actually they just finished the functional assessment or the functional analysis, descriptive functional analysis. So it asks you a bunch of questions as a parent about behaviors, and you answer those, and then it'll tell you what the function of the behavior is, and then it'll take you to the BIP Builder, and the BIP Builder will tell you how to deal with it.
Every school needs to have that. Every school needs to have that.
I agree, totally. But so it's too big of a system. I mean, we certainly I think skills itself, and I'll have to find out, but I think skills itself should be programmed in a way that's visible on the iPad. In fact, I know it is, because when when we have our iPads, we always have skills, and we can see the graphs and everything on skills. But in terms of turning it into smaller apps, I'd have to really give some thought as to how that would happen. I think I shared on this show a few times that I really want to start. We actually are just about to do this. I mean, you know that we're building games. That's one thing. We have a couple of hundred games in the works right now where we're building games that would correlate to skills, and hopefully those will help our kids as well. But one of the things I want to do is I want to get sort of a list of exactly what this parent writes, kind of urgent situations that parents need help, and try to develop applications for that so that parents can know exactly how to deal with behaviors. Most of the time parents have a very hard time in public. So it's just, I need to kind of get a better understanding of what the need is, and then we'll try to design games and apps and so on.
I love when, because there's so many times in the community where people say, why doesn't somebody do this?
Right.
But I know you have said, tell me when that question comes up. And the same thing with Autism Research Group. Dr. Jonathan Tarbox says, tell us. What research do you want to see done? This is what drives the conversation. So instead of just saying those things quietly in our living room and being frustrated, write in and tell us those things. We'll make sure that they get to the right people.
Absolutely. Please do, because it's your ideas. I mean, what we want to do here is we don't want to produce stuff that we think is good. We want to produce stuff that is useful to you as a parent. So,
so
please
think about,
let us
what
know.
do you need? What do you need? People want to know what you need.
Absolutely. Or, I mean, here's another thing that I often wonder, and I wish I just had access to hundreds of parents that could tell me, would it be useful to have just an around-the-clock 800 person available, who we have to have some availability for because we have insurance coverage for our kids. My question is, how would this be something that parents would use? Is just sort of a number where you call in and something very similar to this, but around the clock, where you're in an urgent situation. And especially if you are already a card patient, or have established some sort of patient-doctor relationship with us, then we can certainly assist you on the phone and tell you exactly what to do.
Well, we've been getting ready to do a survey of our viewers, and maybe we can throw some of those questions in for you.
And what are the things that you need?
What do you need? What do you need? I love that. Isn't it great when somebody asks you, what do you need? Because then you have to sit and think, okay, actually, what I need is this. And that's a very freeing thing. Another question here that we've had a bunch of people around this question, but this specific one is, what do you do when your insurance says your child only needs 12 hours a week of therapy when you know they need more like 25 hours? Right. And of course, the numbers change. Some people write in and say, we've got 8 hours and I know we need 40. But in general, what do you suggest when the insurance company is saying, and you mentioned earlier, we can get our assessments under our insurance, but sometimes that's tied to the funding. And a lot of people, we should say, are getting great assessment through their insurance company, but every once in a while somebody's saying, I think it's low. What do you recommend in those circumstances?
Well, first of all, the person that does your assessment is going to be most likely a licensed psychologist. And if they're a licensed psychologist, that means nothing in relation to their ability to make a recommendation about ABA. ABA is pretty much the only thing that's approved by insurance.
Right.
So what you need to do, and the only reason we do it is because we're both, right? I'm a licensed psychologist, I do testing, and I'm also board certified, so my expertise is in both, but it's unusual. So what you would have to do is you go to a licensed psychologist or an assessment center where you get all the testing done. You take that test to an ABA professional. Hopefully they have the ability to kind of understand that test, and then they communicate with the psychologist or with you also need a sort of a referral form or a prescription, which the psychologist can give you, or a psychiatrist, neurologist, developmental pediatrician. Developmental pediatricians also are going to be doing all those tests too. And in some ways you'll get other tests done by a developmental pediatrician, which is very good too. But the point is that really the person making recommendations in terms of ABA should be an expert in ABA. Because if you take it to a psychiatrist, let's say, I mean, I just did a few years ago, I published a paper for psychiatrists about ABA, right? And it was in the, I don't remember the name of the journal, like the journal for the American Academy of Clinical Psychiatry, right? And we published this journal about what is ABA, and it became like the #1 journal. I got a whole ton of awards for it, just because, excuse me, like the medical field doesn't know what ABA is. They're not trained in it, they don't understand it. And for anyone to just imagine, oh my God, am I going to refer a service that actually could last 3 to 4 years at the intensity of 40 hours a week, is beyond their imagination. So what they will tend to recommend is something like 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, which is ineffective almost. It's almost like saying, you know, you are on a medication where the dose has to be 30 milligrams and you're doing 5. It's not going to work. In fact, it's going to make you resistant to the correct dose. So you need to make sure you're dealing with an ABA professional in the mix who can give you the correct recommendation. Now the problem is, at your insurance company, they will have BCBAs, board certified behavior analysts, who will be arguing and saying, oh, 12 hours is enough. Unfortunately, there are a lot of BCBAs out there who also don't really understand that it has to be intensive up to a certain age. So
because BCBA doesn't necessarily mean you have experience with autism, correct?
Right. And, you know, I mean, even now these days, they try to, a lot of the elective courses that you take to get your BCBA, you have the option of taking courses in autism. But the truth is, and no disrespect to the field or people who've worked very hard to get their board certification, but, you know, when we hire board certified behavior analysts, they go through either easily 6 months of training with us before they're even allowed to go solo, because it's a different thing. Like, you really just are learning the techniques. You're not learning how to implement these techniques with children and in what relationship and how and like
well, I think any professional field, I mean, even if we were talking about welders, you know, you have specialization, you know, so if you're somebody who welds and you weld a particular kind of steel, that doesn't mean that you necessarily can do another kind of steel underwater.
Absolutely right.
It doesn't mean that you're not a great welder of that thing that you were doing, but this is a specialty.
Right. I mean, and if you just think about this, Shannon, like, I still struggle to train because we have a lot of BCBAs here, like, I don't know, maybe 120, 30, 40, something like that, growing all the time. And it's very hard for me. I struggle because I'm constantly trying to train them also on understanding the medical aspects. You know, I will often have dialogue with my supervisors and say, how do you not know the dosage of a particular medication? Don't you realize how much that impacts the child's behavior? I mean, and that's just, you know, something very important. But to go back and say, what do? You appeal the decision. You appeal the decision, and this is critical. The appeal process is somewhat of a joke right now. So what happens is you will, there's an appeal procedure on your insurance company's website. You follow that procedure, you send in an appeal, and what happens is the insurance company will contact the provider who made the recommendation. Now, if the and you will then have a provider who's either going to be on their side or on your side. So you need to make sure you have a provider who's willing to at least go to bat for you. Now, we do this daily. In fact, we have a senior supervisor whose job it is just to do this. Peer-to-peer reviews, seriously. And it's terrible because the physicians, most of the time you have a physician who's doing a peer-to-peer with you and they don't have, it doesn't even matter that they have no understanding. They come to the game with the intention of just blocking your hours, right? So, I mean, I've had discussions where the physician has said, I don't know why I should even attempt this, or this child has had enough progress. What is enough progress? Or the child hasn't had enough progress. You know, so it's either enough or not enough, but they won't listen. And like, oh, it seems like this child needs medication. I was like, have you read the report? This child is on medication. Oh, but I think the child needs an SSRI. Have you looked at the report? The child's on an SSRI. I mean, they don't really care. So it's a difficult process. But if you can, and I know parents are so overloaded as it is, if you can, just continue the appeal process to the point where you get to whoever is responsible, whether it's the Department of Insurance or the Department of Mental Health Care, Managed Health Care. Now, let me tell you, those two do respond. Okay. When you get to the level of DMHC or Department of Insurance, they're on your side. Okay. And they're amazing. Like some of the changes that we've gotten just because we've elevated cases to that level are just astonishing.
Okay. And I always remind parents that, you know, we have a lot to do and it's very overwhelming, but job number one is to advocate for our child, because the one thing I'm sure of is that if we don't, we won't get anybody else to.
Right. I mean, and honestly, if you're with CARD, let me tell you, it's part of the process here. Like, we have an entire department, which is AIN, our Autism Insurance Network department, and that's all they do, is just fight for hours for our kids, because we want to make sure we get enough hours for our kids.
And that brings up a really good point that, you know, as you said, make sure that you're working with an ABA provider that's going to go to bat. Surround yourself with people who are going to see it the way you do, your child, that this is important. It's not just important, it's necessity, that you're gonna do whatever you have to do, you're gonna get around whatever obstacle that you have to do, and that you surround yourself with those people, because you will consistently meet people who say that's just not gonna happen.
Right.
And you can't give in to that.
That's right, exactly. Two other resources for this family and any other family who's having this kind of issue. Go on your insurance's website. They always have a series of, I guess they're called treatment protocols or treatment guidelines or something like the ABA treatment guidelines. Print those. Keep those. Those, like, we had an insurance company that wasn't funding our kids if they were in school. And because they considered school to be part of it too. And I was like, I had a lot of dialogue with them around this, and they realized no, school has nothing to do with ABA necessarily. And then when you look at their treatment guidelines, even in there, it says like ABA has to be provided in multiple environments that the child is, such as school. So you need to read that, because in there you might find some things that will help you. Yeah. The other thing that you need to read is go on the Behavior Analysis Certification Board.org, BACB.org, and on there, there's a series of guidelines for ABA, like the frequency, amount, ratio, supervision, etc., and it kind of defines it as early intensive behavior intervention, so young children, and then more focused interventions, but it gives you kind of a history of and science behind how many hours one or the other should have. So you then have some documentation in terms of what you're asking for.
Okay, great. We're going to take one more short break and come back. We've got some people asking about books that you would recommend about ABA and for families starting out. We have two different questions about that. So stick with us. More with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh after these messages.
Hi, I'm Bryce Myler, and I'm the Contracts Director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I've been here for about 5 years. CARD has several employees with many years of insurance experience, dealing with insurance, dealing with pre-authorizations, dealing with discovering whether there's coverage or not. So we have more experience than any ABA provider that I've ever come across. So for a prospective client, somebody that may be interested in, you know, ABA therapy and what CARD has to offer, we have a special 800 number, and you call that number. They will talk to you about what we have to offer, how ABA works. He'll ask you for the front and back of your ID card, and then we check to see if you do or do not have coverage. If you have coverage for ABA therapy, we try to do whatever we can to set it up where we can bill for you and you don't have to fight with the insurance company every month to get your claims paid. For California residents, we recently did a series of insurance trainings all over the state, and you can click on the link below to watch pretty much the full presentation. It has a lot of information, how you can get your insurance company to comply with what they're supposed to do, understanding the networks, and many other valuable pieces of information.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest for Ask Dr. Doreen is Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, a true expert in the field of autism. And so thrilled to have you here. We've had two different questions that came in. The first one, somebody wants to know if what's a book that you would recommend for families just starting out. And the second one was about, is there a book that you recommend having to do with ABA and with behavioral interventions for children? Yeah. So what do you think?
So, there's different books. There's so many books that I don't know which would pertain to what, but we were earlier talking about this book. This is the book Overcoming Autism, which was authored by Lynn Cagle and Claire Lazebnik. And they write about ABA, but in here they're calling it pivotal response, PRT. Mm-hmm. PRT is a form of ABA. So, or it's actually, I would say, even go beyond that and say it's a part of the ABA that we do. Mm-hmm. So it's not, for instance, in pure ABA language, when you are trying to get a child to begin speaking, for instance, as an example, what we call it man training. And man training and that's more of sort of a Skinnerian language or verbal behavior language. And man training is essentially you want the child to vocalize whatever it is they are passionate about or really want, which is a request. And when they do and you use various techniques to get them to vocalize that, and when they do vocalize that, you make sure they get that. And that's a very concise example of what pivotal response training is. Pivotal response basically says, use the things that are extremely motivating to the child. And you can do that. At some point, you kind of need to go a little bit beyond that, and if you don't, this is my opinion, if you don't slow down a little bit, because your child's interests may not necessarily be the things you want them to be interested in. So in our form of training, although everything in the beginning is pivotal response, we tend to start to barter, like, okay, I'll give you this, but you have to do this,
right.
But so this is a good book, Overcoming Autism. I think the Kegels have good books on pivotal response, others as well, other books. There are some books that are story type that will kind of guide you through the life of someone, and those are not bad for when you're starting out, because I think it's so overwhelming when you start out that it's nice to kind of go through someone else's story.
And I was saying during the break that the first two books that were handed to me by somebody who was a client here at CARD, a mom that I ran into that I always attribute, to saving our lives, because that's how we found CARD. She handed me this book and A Real Boy by Christina Adams.
Right.
And of course you're familiar with Christina Adams because her son was being treated here at CARD.
Right, and Christina is a very wonderful writer. In fact, a lot of people have told me that that's their favorite book.
Yeah, I mean,
it was a great book.
And I was saying to you that we were given both of these books, and this was a great book and very instrumental in helping us along the road. But A Real Boy is really the one that did it for us because it was delivered in a manner that I could
relate to.
That, and when I was overwhelmed and underslept, and I could really get into the story of what happened.
Right. Well, and I don't know if you've read, but the very, very first book, this is years ago, that came out, and I would say was more influential in our field than even, I always refer to the sort of the seminal study in our field was the 1987 Lovas article, which showed that kids with autism can recover. Well, one of the moms around the same time wrote a book, which was her story, and that's Let Me Hear Your Voice.
And I have not read that. That has sat on my end table for I don't know how many years.
Right.
But I didn't realize that she was in the original Lovas study.
She wasn't in the original Lovas study.
Okay.
She wasn't. She actually was someone who contacted us almost the day after the Lovas study came out, and then I ran their programs on the East Coast, but she went through it twice. So she had two children who were diagnosed, and she went through it, and both did extremely well. And her name is Catherine Maurice, or her pen name is, and she, for a very, very long time, I would say that was the best book I've ever read. Okay. I mean, it was a fabulous book. It is a fabulous book. things have developed quite a bit since then. It's a little bit older, and there's a lot more that you can do.
Yeah.
But it was a fabulous book.
Yeah.
And so that's another one that's a really good story. And it does guide you. And there's a lot of books that are sort of intended to guide new parents. We're in the process of writing the card book, and you know what? Our deadline is the end of this year, so by the end of this year we'll have a book out.
That's wonderful.
And that's going to be a pretty... it's a huge book. Let me see, how many pages is this? Like... Yeah, this is like about 250 pages, and ours is about 600. So it's going to be a pretty big book. And it's, but it's chapter by chapter, and it will go through everything we believe at CARD. And it's hard because, obviously, to have everything from our visual programs to how we get verbal language to go to self-care to you name it. It's a lot of stuff in there, and it's going to take a little bit of time. I'm editing it, so it's a little bit hard. So
I'm so
but hang
looking
in
forward
there.
to it, though.
And then the other thing I would suggest is these days, everything is online rather than in a book. So there's part of me that wants to say, get on our website, start looking around our website. A lot of parents tell me it's a very good place to start when you're just starting out.
Yeah.
And we're just about to put together, I think that'll be another 3 months or so, and we'll put out sort of a parent's manual getting started in autism, and that'll kind of tell you everything you're supposed to do.
Oh, what a wonderful, wonderful thing. Fabulous. We've got a lengthy question that has come in just now. Hello, Dr. Doreen. Thanks for sharing your time in such a noble cause. I have a question. My daughter's 6, currently receives 1 hour per week of ABA therapy. We know she needs more. We use skills, but we know that this is not enough because we work and have limited time to do this, and it really depends on how much time you put into it, right? And how much time you have to put in it. They want to know, how do the remote sessions work, or who do I contact to get training or certification that you referred earlier? I live in a small town, no providers, and the ones available are super booked and on a waiting list. They continue to write, we love skills and have bought some of the IBT videos, but again, time is what our biggest concern is. She's extremely smart. Some therapists have said that she has savant characteristics. She is slightly verbal with prompt only, and compliance is an issue. An issue is in all caps. She likes to do her stereotypical things, and huge tantrums are often when we redirect her. So most is done with physical prompt. She needs the intensive ABA, which is our missing puzzle. Thank you so much.
Sure.
A lot of things in there.
Yeah, but the primary thing in there is that don't even stress yourself if you're doing 1 hour of ABA. Don't do it. It's just going to be more stressful for you, more stressful for her. We need to get you into an intensive program. I don't know where you live. I'm assuming you're in a state that potentially has coverage. I hope you do. One of the things I would suggest you do is, and anyone can do this. I mean, this is very easy actually. Go on the website for Autism Votes, which is sort of the Autism Speaks website that updates all the information about insurance mandates in various states. So let's hope you're in an insurance state.
AutismVotes.org.
Correct. And then once we establish that you're in the state that has insurance, and if you're not, it's going to be a lot harder because then we're looking at possibilities for other sources of funding.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would still be able, if you're not, then I would still ask you to write in to CARD at our website and go to remote services and write to the person who's in charge of remote services or the coordinator. That would be Morva, or the person who's in charge is John Galley. And they would both be happy to give you a lot of information. But let's assume you are covered, your state is covered, and then we have to check your policy. And most of the policies, if you or your husband work for an employer over 50, will have this coverage. And if they don't have the coverage, we can tell you how to get your HR department to get that coverage. It's not costly at all. And then once you get and the way we help you with that is, once you go through Morva, you will give us your insurance information. Morva then goes to our contracts department, and we have a wonderful director in our contracts department.
Goodness, yes.
Let me tell you, her word is gold. If she looks at your thing and says you have coverage and your insurance company says you don't, she'll win. Trust me, she will win. So we will identify your coverage. If you have coverage, you're set, because then all you do is you go back to, then Bryce, who's in charge of contracts, will tell Morva, who runs the coordination of all remote services, and then we will get in touch with you, send out information that, like, you're already on skills, so you've already filled out the assessment, and we get you started. And that means you get assigned a supervisor. The supervisor, we will pick based on your child's characteristics and also based on where you live, so that we can have frequent access. And that's it. The supervisor starts coming out to you and will hire people in your area, and we will train them so that they become our employees and they're trained, because that's the only way we can get insurance coverage for you. And then they will work with your child, and the supervisor will tell them exactly what to do, because now they're trained and all they really need is sort of the curriculum and the skills and so on. But the supervisor monitors them, and we make recommendations. We get definitely more than 1 hour a week. We'll be, you know, your child's 6, so you're still within the window where we can request a high number of hours, somewhere between 25 and 40.
She says she's in Florida, Cape Coral City.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be very easy to deal with. I mean, Florida is a very, not only a state that gives a lot of funding, but a state that understands ABA very well. So yeah, we can definitely do that. And depending on how close you are to, like, the, as I said, the first office we're opening in the south east is going to be Baton Rouge in a few weeks, in a few months, and then from there our director of sort of expansion is Dr. Catherine Minch, Cat Minch, and she will be working with a lot of different locations, cities in the south, and trying to open and expand fast, so we actually have card services near you. But
she wrote in and said, I'm sorry, could you tell me the website or number to contact? I have both my husband and I have insurance, and she is with Medicaid. So I'm going to ask Emily if she'll put up the 800 number there on the screen for you. And you can also visit www.centerforautism.com.
Right.
So there's the phone number right there on your screen, 855-345-CARD, which translates to 2273. That's a toll-free number. When you call that number, who you get on the other end of the line is Amy.
And, that's right.
And
Amy.
tell Amy that Dr. Doreen and Shannon sent you.
Yeah.
And Amy is one of the best people on the planet, truly. So I love being able to say that you're not going to get pushed aside to some, phone tree, some crazy phone tree.
Amy now has an assistant, because she does 24/7. She's on that phone all the time, and so we've
cloned Amy.
That's right.
And which is a good thing.
That's right. But all you'll ask for is to talk to remote services.
Okay.
And that will be Morva, M-O-R-V-A is her name, and you'll go to Morva, and then you'll get this whole process started, and you'll say, this is where I am. Dr. Doreen said I need remote services. This is my insurance information. Morva will take it from there.
Okay. So really exciting.
I'm very glad that you were listening.
Yes, and then you can write back and say where you are, because that kind of help, and that's what the live feature is for. We love it when it works.
And just so you know, the portion that tends to be a little bit difficult for us to convince the insurance companies is sort of the cost of travel, and when we start sending supervisors over there, because you'll have our supervisor there pretty fast and pretty frequent as well. And some of the insurance companies completely get it, and they're very on board with this, and others we sort of have to negotiate with them a little bit. And so if anything, any cost that might come to you, Morva will set it up and do the best she can with this, but the cost that you might become partially responsible for is just the travel of the supervisor.
Okay.
Because the staff will be local to you, and we'll help you, we'll hire them.
Okay, absolutely fabulous. It's so exciting when those kinds of things work out. Emily, do we have time for one short question or no? I'm sorry? Short question. I don't know that this is a short question. My 8-year-old son's handwriting is horrible. I don't know whether to work on that with hand skills or teach him how to type. Like, where do you go when they're 8?
He will need both. So it depends on the reason that you're doing this. In other words, if it's for schoolwork, then you got to work on the handwriting. Okay. If it's for the purposes of communication, then I would go to typing. Okay. But he will need both, ultimately. I mean, the concept is you really just need... And what is that program? What is it? Handwriting without tears?
That's the big popular one right now in schools.
Yeah, a lot of people use that. We've used that. It's not a bad program at all, actually. It'll help. And again, this is a fine motor issue, so you might want to make sure that his other aspects of his fine motor have developed.
So maybe check with the OT on what's working on.
Right, and there's a lot of practice exercises and strengthening exercises that we would do, for instance, in order to make sure the child's able to have enough pressure, hold correctly, and that sort of thing.
We've done some little snippets on the show before about OT things to do to improve the grasp, the tripod grasp, like those push pin art things that they do. They put the kids on the carpet and any kind of design, and they have to push the pin through to the carpet, and then they can hold it up to the light. It's very reinforcing to them.
That's right.
Things like having the broken crayons. They break the crayons so that they're so small that the only way they can hold them is with the tripod grasp. Lots of different things, and we've covered a lot of those on the show before. You can search that topic.
Great.
We're out of time, which I can't believe it goes so fast, but so thrilling to have you here with us and answering the questions. Tons of questions that we didn't get to, but we'll keep them in the mix and hopefully get to some of those next week.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, always.
We're going to take a break and go to the A word and follow Jack Riley, a little boy who has been getting his early intensive behavioral intervention, and see what he's up to right now. I'll remind you that after the break, we'll have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson is here. We are going to be talking with her about where she was last week with her son and what that trip was like. But we also have a very special guest that is going to be joining us later on in the program with an idea that he came up with to make proms more accessible to kids of all abilities. A very exciting story. I know you're going to enjoy it. But first, take a look at the A word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Hey, Jessica. Oh, yes. Hi. What's up? Can I have Papa iPhone? Later.
Jack Riley is now gaining attention without prompts. When first teaching a new skill, a therapist does errorless learning, which is prompting a child with the correct response. 4 months ago, when gaining attention was taught, Jack Riley needed a gesture, physical, and vocal prompt to do it. As time progressed, less prompting was needed, like using only a gesture prompt or a partial vocal prompt.
Sure, which one do you want? Both.
Another skill they have been working on is categories. First, they teach it to him receptively.
Give me food. Where's the food?
Then they teach it to him expressively, first with prompts.
Tell me a furniture. Say Say a couch. A couch is a furniture. Furniture. Good. So tell me a furniture. Couch is a couch. Say couch is a furniture. Good. So tell me a furniture. Couch is furniture. Yeah.
And then without.
Tell me a food. Okay. Apple is food. Good. Tell me another food. Watermelon is food. Yay! Watermelon is a food. Come here. Oh, you're so smart.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman with Taka. My guest here.
I am Jennifer Lucero with Taka.
Taka Mom is here in the house. Jeff saw on a TV commercial, they were making calzones, and he looked at me and goes, Mom, please make me that. Wait a minute, calzone, you can't have calzone. He goes, well, you make me pizza. Why don't we call it a pizzone? So we're going to do this ode to Jeff, pizzone. So I'm going to have Jen come on in.
All right.
You're in charge.
Ready.
We're going to add a little grapeseed oil. garlic, cut up chicken, finely cut up onion, and we're going to throw a little bit of basil. So we're going to just take about 5 minutes or so, saute up the chicken and all of the onions together. While Jen is slaving away at the stove, I'm going to make the pizza crust. A lot of gluten-free choices that you have out there for pizza crust. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the dry. Again, I'm using eggs. There are a lot of egg replacers on the Taka website. We have about a dozen different ways to replace eggs. So I'm going to go ahead and add my shortening. Calls for a little extra salt, which I'm going to put in here. And also add a little pepper. And we also have herbs de Provence that gives the crust a nice Italian flavor. Can't forget the apple cider vinegar, organic stuff, ready to go. Yes, I have all my ingredients. We're ready to rock with this mixer. And don't be afraid of dough. Dough doesn't bite. So here's what we'll be working with to make the puzzone. I'm ready to go. Let's get this party started. So what we're going to do next is roll out the dough. I like to be rolling in the dough, but we're going to roll out the dough instead. So let's go ahead and get started here with that. So again, you see me using the parchment paper all the time. Love this stuff. It's basically unbleached, ready to go. It's just going to make life a lot easier on your rolling pin. You don't need to coat it or anything, which is a lot easier. But I swear I should buy that by the gross ton. So the pizzones, this basically makes 2 big pizzones. I'm going to take half of the dough and roll it out. Half of the other dough will be for the other pizzone that we're going to make in just a little bit. So you want to do, you're not making a pie crust, you're kind of making a long oval shape. So we're going to try to make a shape where I'm going to basically roll this over with all the yummy fillings. And so any combination or variation thereof. This sauce, just real simple, is organic crushed tomatoes. I've added a little bit of salt and pepper and herbs de Provence in that as well, which I love. I like extra fresh basil. That's always yummy to have on your puzzone. And thank you. This turned out fantastic. So we're just basically building it the way that we want to eat it. Of course, my favorite rice-free, organic, dairy-free, soy-free cheese. It's going to pop out the sides.
Okay.
I'm not afraid of popping out the sides. So that's the beauty of the parchment paper. Once you're done, you just flip it over and peel it back. So I'm just taking a fork now and going around the edges. It looks so pretty.
It looks really nice.
So for 400 degrees, we're going to go for about 25 minutes. You want it golden brown. And because we cooked everything pretty much already, you're not worried about not having everything fully cooked. So look how cute those look.
Looks great.
Like those 4 happy people right there. This weighs a ton. So let's go to the magic oven. Pull out our finished product. And voila!
Good.
Oh my gosh,
looks
this
beautiful.
is so yummy. There's nothing better than a little Jeff Ackerman pizzone.
Yeah.
And this is going to be nuclear hot, but we'll go ahead and cut it open so you can. Oh my gosh, this is going to taste so good
That
later
looks
on for
great.
your kids.
Yum.
Feedback, keep it coming. Thank you for helping, Jen.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us. Come back to Autism Live. We'll keep doing allergy-friendly cooking classes. If you have any suggestions or things that you would like to see us make, bring it on. You can reach us at autismlive@gmail.com or Facebook.
Love the Facebook.
I know, too much for me. Facebook, so facebook.com/autismlive, or thousands of Taka recipes ready to go. Basically go to Taka Now, TACANOW.org. And we'll see you next time.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod, and I'm so thrilled to be back here in the studio with my good pal.
I
who just had a birthday. Happy birthday.
Did. Thank you. It was actually the second time since Wyatt was born that my birthday fell on Mother's Day.
That's
The
a
first
lovely
was
thing.
his first year, and then this year. So it was a really special day. They took me to brunch,
nice.
and then my husband took me to see The Great Gatsby, which I loved.
Was it good?
Well, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, it's opulent.
Who cares about the plot? I mean, look at all that jewelry, those sets, that music. It was great.
An escape, a wonderful escape. And we should say you weren't here last week because you were on an adventure, and I read your beautiful letter here to tell everybody where you were going and what your plan was.
Yes.
But if you missed it last week, tell us where you went.
Well, we went to outdoor education school up in the mountains of the Los Padres National Forest past Fraser Park with my son's all typical. He has a combined 5th and 6th grade class.
Wow.
And at a private Christian school. And I was so nervous because, as I said, I was nervous about whether he would sleep through the night, whether he would have anxiety attacks, whether he would complain, and equally nervous about my husband doing all of the above.
Who you had come as reinforcements because you couldn't sleep in the cabin,
I couldn't sleep in the boys' cabin. And I think I actually have a picture of the cabin. I don't know whether Emily, that's the actual main hall. See, isn't that beautiful? All stone.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, but the cabins were like that little A-frames. And my son's typically developing peers were with us. And look at those kids. Are they the cutest?
Cute. Very,
Are they just
very
the
cute.
cutest?
And is that Wyatt on the end?
Wyatt is not. It looks just like Wyatt. That's his friend
he
Seth.
just looks different. Okay.
Yeah, Wyatt was off somewhere with his dad at that point, but there's Wyatt and Dad. Yeah. But those little boys, and here's my girls. These are my little surrogate daughters.
So you slept in the cabin with the girls?
Yeah, with the girls. And that's the way it looks up there.
Wow.
I mean, I've never seen such giant pine cones, like this big.
Wow.
And I slept with the girls. So Reed had to go. And my husband, who had some pretty intensive cancer treatment last summer, we were a little nervous about his ability to, hang out with all these 5th and 6th grade boys and sleep in a bunk.
And let's say this, that none of us are spring chickens. None of us are the 25-year-old parents.
Not a spring chicken. I mean, Reed usually gets mistaken for the grandfather.
Yes, my husband and I both get that.
Yes, so we were definitely the oldest parents there. But I have to say, I found myself to be a little more energetic than moms, 20 years younger than me.
You are younger than all of us put together. It's true.
Well, I want to say I was very nervous, and the day we left, the morning we left, we were supposed to go to Wyatt's school and all go together, caravan. Wyatt had meltdown of all meltdowns. And, it was interesting because I had read a blog from another mom about going to New York to visit her friends and how her son had a massive meltdown prior to the trip. But once he was on the trip, he was great. Very similar situation.
Okay.
Wyatt had a massive meltdown that morning, started perseverating on one thing that really disturbed him was when we made the transition from videos to DVDs completely and threw out his Baby Einstein videos.
Yeah.
He missed those videos so much, and he perseverates on making a video player. And so that day, I want a video player, I want videos, couple of meltdowns, massive meltdowns. And I said to my husband, Reed was like, we're not going. I said, chill out. This is his way of decompressing before the trip.
There you go.
And so I want to say to moms out there that oftentimes our kids know better than we do what they need to get themselves in the position to go on something. Because I can only imagine his anxiety. But I did write about how for us as moms of kids with autism, we have a lot more preparation on a trip.
Oh,
let's
girl,
face it.
I was picturing you packing that cooler.
That giant cooler with gluten-free, dairy-free food, which they did have a lot of at the camp. They made special pizza for him.
Really?
They made special pasta.
Oh, how nice.
They were great because we called them in advance. But we packed the cooler. We packed the art supplies because Wyatt calms down by drawing. We packed... They said no electronic devices, so we did not take the iPad, so I was nervous about that because he goes to bed with it every night. But when we got up there, he really did well, Shannon. I was really shocked. And at the end of the first night, the kids had to go into the main lodge and write in their journals about what they did that day. Well, I asked my husband to give me a little break and sit with him and help him with that. Well, he comes over to me and says, I can't do this. He's not focused. I don't understand. And I could also see the things that happens with my husband when we're around typical kids. That sense of, why can't he be like that?
Yeah.
Because all those kids were relating and writing and and excited, and Wyatt had to be guided through this, right? So I said to him, you know what, go back to the cabin. I'll handle this. And I sat down with Wyatt, and I broke it down, you know, and I took the time with him, and he did fine.
Yeah.
So I went back to the cabin and with Wyatt, and it was time for bed, and he said, I said, he did fine. You have to learn how to break things down.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, well, good night. And I said, good night. And he goes, don't I get a kiss? And I said, no, I don't really feel like kissing you right now. I said, because I don't really like you right now. I said, I love you always. But right now, I really don't like you because I really think you need to be the bigger person here. I think you need to be the parent. You need to be more understanding of what our son is going through. He's totally out of his element. He's the only child with autism here. He has no routine, none of his favorite things. Can you maybe make some allowances? Can you maybe kind of step outside of your ego for 1 minute here and do the right thing?
Wow.
So he was like, okay. So the next morning, I wake up, I went to get him. He goes, you know, you're right. So it was the talk that we all, and you say sometimes you have to have a different talk with your husband.
Well, you know, when you were telling me about this yesterday, I was saying that, you know, sometimes it's the reverse with us. That, you know, I think that my husband is much more accepting because he didn't have a whole lot of exposure to a whole lot of other kids.
Yeah.
He always looks at what Jem's doing and he goes, that's great. And he gets content, you know, and says, that's great. And I'm always going, it's not great. We got to push for this. We got to push for that. We got to, you know, so sometimes the talk is the reverse, where my husband is saying to me, take a breath.
Yeah.
Take a breath and see what he just did. He's a kid with autism.
Right.
Who just did that.
And be proud of that.
And I'm always the one going, yeah, but this happened, you know, and this person was annoyed with him. And the big joke in our family always is, yes, he passed for annoying.
He passed for
annoying. He passed for annoying. They didn't realize that he had autism. He passed for annoying. This is something to be celebrated instead of me going, how are we going to, like, get in there and rearrange that and move that around, and, you know, instead of just... Sometimes I have to take a moment and appreciate who he is and where he is.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's hard for me.
We all have to put ourselves in our spouse's shoes and try to have some empathy and talk it out. You know, talk it out.
Yes.
And when we're frustrated, I think we have to say, you know, I'm very frustrated with you right now. Can you work with me on this? So anyway,
I love that, you know, that you're sharing that so honestly, and that, you know, Reed is an awesome man.
He's an awesome dad, and I love him dearly.
But he's so awesome that you can say that here and say, I was, in that moment, I didn't like him very much.
I didn't like you. Yeah, I love you, but I don't like you.
And that's important for all of us to hear, because sometimes in that moment, it feels like it's the end of the world.
It does.
Right?
It does.
It's not.
It's never the end of the world. We always have a second chance to communicate and a fresh day. So then the only other, before we take a break and then go on to in the news, I just want to say that with so much emphasis on bullying and kids not being nice to other kids, I want to say that I am so blessed to have a school, Conejo Adventist Elementary School, where the children are taught to be empathetic, nurturing, and these boys and girls, in the various exercises we had to do in outdoor experiences, rope climbing and predator versus prey and all these games we had to play, to watch those kids take Wyatt under their wing, to watch what little junior therapists they've become. Wyatt, that's silly talking. Wyatt, focus on this. Wyatt, come on, let's do this. Wyatt, just 5 more minutes and we'll be done. It just is so inspiring to me.
Yeah.
And, you know, they have a group at school. They sign up to get to be with him on the playground. There's a waiting list always of who's going to play with Wyatt.
That's so lovely.
So I just want to say that not all kids out there are bullies. There's some amazing children out there that are really being taught empathy and loving kindness, and that our kids can be great friends for them, and they can be great friends for our kids.
Well, and that's lovely, but I think there's some trickle down, and that the school, as you said, is doing some great things. And maybe sometime, Nancy, we can have somebody from the school on to talk about how they've implemented that.
You know, I would love to do
create that
because
environment.
this school is known for being incredible for kids on the spectrum, and you have to have your own funding for an aide. You know, you have to get all that together. They don't provide special ed, but they will take a child if they have the proper support, and they have learned that this is good for the kids, the typical kids. It's really great for them to learn. And that's a good topic for today because we've got a very special guest who's going to tell us about this prom night that he did for some special kids, high schoolers, for prom down in Fullerton. So he's on after we're going to get
come
to
back
in the
and do
news.
a couple of in the news,
couple little
and
tiny
then
stories. Okay,
a very special
but I'm
guest.
alive. I made it.
You did.
No poison ivy. No, just great experience, and I'm really glad it went as well as it did.
So glad you went. All right, we're going to take a break, and we're going to be back with In the News. Stick with us.
My name is Rocky.
Autism used to affect 1 in every 10,000 children. Now it affects 1 in every 91 kids.
TACA is one of 5 organizations helping families living with autism today.
Our kids came back to life. There's a whole community out there, and now we're a part of it.
Oh, TACA has a place for me.
To find TACA, go to www.tacanow.org.
Please.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. It's time for In the News. There were so many things. We're not going to get to all the stories we had planned, but a couple of really important things you may have noticed in the Wall Street Journal in the last week. They had a study about more information that we're getting about the differences between boys and girls, because we know that there are so many differences. This is new research, including some of the latest data from the International Society for Autism Research annual conference that happened just a couple of weeks ago, addressing one of these biggest mysteries. Why are there so many more boys than girls?
Are you asked that all the time? Because I am.
Yeah, I mean,
all the time, and I really don't know what to say.
I think it's right up there with people say to me, have they figured out yet what causes this? I wish people would ask me, have they figured out what to do to help our kids? Because that's the thing that I feel like I have much more traction to talk about. I wish people would ask that, but they say, have they figured out what causes it, and do they know why it's so many more boys than girls? But they're paring it down to figure out what exactly it is.
Okay.
Growing consensus is arguing that sex difference exists in genetic susceptibility, brain development, and social learning. That social learning is a very big component of this, and that they're meaningful to our understanding of the disorder and how it will be treated. Yale University researchers presented results showing that being female appears to provide genetic protection. Now, this is not the first time that we've heard this.
That's a good thing for me to answer them. That's a pretty easy concept to grasp.
But there are some further things about it, about the social learning. So at Emory University, they show preliminary work that boys and girls with autism learn social information differently. And stop and think about this. Isn't this true? I mean, little girls, I don't know that it's as much this way, but when I was a little girl, I was handed a doll and said, take care of this. And my brother was handed a truck and told to go play.
So perhaps the nurturing aspect of taking care of and more social interaction, whereas boys, you know, we wonder why boys with autism line up trucks and things like that. Well, they're dealing with inanimate, non-human objects more than girls.
Absolutely. I mean, that seems to be what they're drawn to. But the argument here is that perhaps that they actually learn social information in a completely different way. Okay, so new data together with previously published studies suggest that sex should be taken into account in diagnosing and in creating individualized treatment plans. So it really has to be, and I think this is a boon for everybody, especially though for the parents of children who are girls, because so often the girl gets diagnosed and they go, well, here's the program that we have for autism, and parents write in and say, it's 15 boys and my 1 girl.
Right. I always feel for the parents of girls with autism, because I think that they often don't get some of the understanding and specialized treatment that we need to have for girls.
Absolutely. So hopefully this is going to help us to, so there is the genetic protection.
Yeah, it says
also
twice as many on average high-risk genetic mutations with boys.
For the boys, yes, twice as many. But
So
there
that's
is a social learning component. Hopefully this will help us to get more programs designed for girls and maybe to look at what we need to address socially with boys to be helpful.
Okay, good. Now, this story was a great one. A car wash provides jobs for adults with autism. Get a quality car wash while providing jobs for adults with autism at the same time. That's the concept behind a business debuting this week in Parkland. Rising Tide Car Wash, and I don't know where Parkland is.
It's in Florida.
Okay. Is the brainchild of a family with an autistic son, Andrew, now 22. The entrepreneur dad and non-autistic brother came up with the idea to launch a business that could use the strengths of people with autism to offer a superior product. The business would provide badly needed jobs for the autistic who face unemployment rates estimated at 90%. People, this has got to change. The Dairy family opted to develop a car wash because that business harnesses autistic people's comfort for repetitive tasks, their tendency to compulsive cleanliness. Wyatt would love this because he loves water.
Yeah.
He loves to get out the car wash and do the thing on the window.
Using your strength.
Yeah, so car washes hire large numbers of people, and so they now employ 32 car workers with autism, including Andrew. They have rigorously trained, passed an exam, and the supervisors are skilled. And they went on to say most people with autism can work. They can be very successful when given the right support. There just aren't enough job opportunities with the right support system. Bravo to that. Yeah. And I think we should get this dad on our show.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll
and if you're
put
in
an
the
offer out
Florida
to him.
area and you want to support this business, it's Rising Tide Car Wash. It's at 7201 North State Road 7 in Parkland, and they're open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
I'd be getting my car wash there every week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so we're going to call the dad and the sons and see if we can have them on.
And then you brought to my attention yesterday something that really just tickled me.
This actually came out of, since I was in Sacramento, I've become very friendly with some of the legislators there, and Senator Darrell Steinberg's office has been sending me stories. And this, you put, look at the bright side. So you tell this.
I love this. We've talked before on the show about my family likes to go to Disneyland. It's a big vacation destination that a lot of you have said that you want to go to. And that there is allegedly, I guess we can say that there is a pass because it's here in the news. There is the option of a guest assistance pass that you can get when you go to a Disneyland attraction.
Yes.
And you can get it for up to 6 people. And I have said it is the reason why it is the happiest place on earth.
Yes.
Well, apparently, some very wealthy moms have decided to utilize this in a very strange way. They are reportedly paying people with disabilities big bucks to tag along on their Disney World vacation.
$135 per hour.
Now,
$380 per hour. Wait a minute. Disney Tours offers a VIP pass and fast passes for $310 to $380. They're paying
$130
if you
an hour.
Take a child with autism with you, or maybe a child and a parent, $130 per hour through a Florida tour company.
Okay, so it's and it's by referral only. But if you think about it, so Disneyland is saying if you want to be able to cut through the lines and get the VIP tour, we'll do it for $310 to $380 per hour.
Right.
And these enterprising, wealthy moms have said, no, we're going to pay somebody $130 an hour with a disability to just go along with us because it's going to make us be able to get on the rides that much quicker.
Yeah, so yet again, maybe one of the few perks we have,
I have to say, I guess there are some people who might point to this and think that this is wrong. I don't think there's a thing wrong with this.
I don't either.
I think it's great. That's income for somebody.
It's income, and if somebody needs the income, God knows we don't have enough funding for the treatment for our kids. Let them fund it through this.
Exactly, and it gives them a social experience.
Right.
What could possibly be wrong with that? I said early on that when we got hip to the pass, because we couldn't go without it.
Right.
We just couldn't.
No, we couldn't. If I had to wait in that line for 2 hours, forget it.
No,
Meltdown
my child still would melt down.
Yeah.
And then the extra added perk was that everybody, once they knew that we had that pass, they wanted to go.
Popular kids.
They wanted to go on the play date to to Disneyland with us was like, when are you going? We'll arrange our vacation around yours, which made it really fun for my son.
I know.
And I didn't think there was anything wrong with that then, and I still don't. I think it's great that Disney does that for us. By the way, other parks do something, but nobody does it like Disneyland.
No, that's true. You go to that office as soon as you get there. You get that pass. Now, I just hope this doesn't result in too much that they shut it down and it causes problems.
They have tightened it up a lot more in the recent years.
Right.
You aren't supposed to have to show anything when you go. They will ask you why you need it.
Yes.
When we go, they say, now why is it that we need this pass? And I say, because in tight spaces, my son, for a long period of time, will start to degrade. Now there are some lines that they don't. It doesn't equal you getting there quicker. They'll let a family member stand in line while you go do other things in the park and come back and join them in the line.
Right.
So they are tightening it up, and I guess maybe that's the negative of it.
Well, you know, the passes at Disneyland and being able to go into that special line are a perk, and I try to think of what the perks are, and sometimes my friends and I come up with, you know, silly things like, look at it this way. Other kids will be shooting heroin while ours are still playing with Thomas the Tank Engine.
Right.
So, you know, whatever.
There are some perks, and we should get them. It should be allowed. I have said it. Where's my souk Nazi?
There's not enough fun in autism.
That's
okay.
right.
So we're going to have a great guest on next. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with I think he is the owner of the Fullerton Restaurant, Bourbon Street Bar and Grill.
Okay.
And, Larry. And he has a son with autism. He's going to tell us about this amazing program he came up with. I can't wait to hear. Larry has a son, Boyd, and who is 5. But he came up with this great idea, and he's going to tell us all about that evening and how the kids did.
Proms, but much more, because it's a whole thing called Fullerton Cares.
Yes.
So we're going to find out about how one person can make a huge difference. So thrilled to have him.
Okay.
All right, stick with us.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, you know, where is he, what is he doing, is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy. But, you know, we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT?
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting 2 battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, you know, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle, and without that
We wouldn't be able to receive the service dog, so we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, Act Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them, and they're making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear Act Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. You know, we underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community. We are back with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy.
And a very special guest.
We do. We have with us Larry Hauser from Fullerton. And Larry, you are, first of all, you're a business owner. Tell us about your business.
The name of the restaurant is called Bourbon Street Bar and Grill.
Okay.
It's in the historic downtown Fullerton.
Okay. How long have you been the founder, owner of that, Larry?
We are going on our 6th year now.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you are also the father of a child with autism. Tell us about that.
Yep. My son Boyd, he's 5 years old. Found out that he had autism. He was actually born a week after the restaurant opened. So about 18 months later, we find out that he has autism, and things changed after that.
Oh, do they?
And ultimately, you became the founder of a nonprofit organization. Tell us about it's Fullerton Cares, correct?
Yes.
And what does Fullerton Cares do?
Well, at first, I didn't know if anybody did care, okay? So I named it Fullerton Cares, hoping that people would care. And I found out that a lot of people cared. So I started it soon after I found out that Boyd had autism.
How old was Boyd when he was diagnosed?
18 months.
18 months? You got an early diagnosis. Excellent.
Yeah. My mom was I worked in the school district, so she was always...
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
but you
Pushing at us,
listened.
yeah.
You listened, and that's important.
Right.
We listened, yes.
Yeah.
So you started this organization, and tell us what you do with Fullerton Cares. How does it get its funds, and how does it support autism in the Fullerton area?
With Fullerton Cares, I wanted to create a organization that not only raised money for kids with autism and programs, autism programs in our community, but I wanted to create something that had an inclusionary vision, meaning bringing other people, other families who are not exposed to autism, and creating these events where everybody comes to them and they're able to see families with autism and just be around them, and trying to educate families who are not exposed. And the result of that, I'm hoping, is obviously education, acceptance, and then ultimately anti-bullying.
Well, you're a visionary and a wonderful person to have in a community. I love this idea. And you've been able to raise quite a bit of money, an impressive amount of money that you've been able to raise with different events, and we'll talk about some of those fundraisers. But we asked you to come in because you did something pretty remarkable having to do with prom. Tell us what you decided to do.
Well, I have to give more of that credit to the special education teachers at Sonora High School in La Habra.
Okay.
And then one particular, her name is Angie Chancellors. The other 2 teachers are Caroline Llewellyn and Sophie Long.
Okay.
But Angie called me up, and she said, "Hey, I want to have a typical prom for her son Chris." And I was thinking about it. I'm, let's do this, Angie. And so we talked a little bit about it. And I said, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to stage a hostess and 2 servers, and we're going to give them the close to typical type of dining experience that we possibly can."
Okay.
So.
Does this make me tear up?
I know, because, someday we're going to be in that same boat saying,
Yes,
we want our sons to go to prom and have that experience. But you made it happen for a total of 10 kids, correct?
Yes, that's
and
correct.
3 of them are Down syndrome, and 7 on the autism spectrum.
Yes. Oh, there we have some pictures. Oh, isn't
gorgeous
that?
What a lovely restaurant in the background. But look at those shiny
how
faces.
Great they look.
Yeah.
So, the boys got all dressed up in their tuxes, and the girls got in their beautiful prom dresses, and they felt so special, I'm sure.
So, Larry, talk us through, so what was their evening like? Because it wasn't just dinner.
There you are putting the corsages on.
There
You
you
gave
go.
them corsages.
There you are.
Since Fullerton Cares and Bourbon Street are practically 2 and the same, because I had founded both of them, Fullerton Cares, we're invited to go pin the corsages on the prom goers. And what are those things called?
The wrist corsages. The wrist corsages, yeah.
Okay, and so we went, and that really it hit us. Like right when we got in there, we were so not only happy, but reality had set in, because my son's only 5, but we were just really just happy for the families,
I bet it was an emotional night for you.
They always are.
It's emotional for me just hearing about it and looking at it.
But they had dinner, and there were photos.
Well, it wasn't we tried to make it typical, but it wasn't typical, because so many people wanted to see this that our restaurant was packed. Okay, and when they arrived, it was like, actresses and actors arriving on the red carpet. There's so many reporters that just slapping pictures at them.
So they felt like stars. They felt like celebrities.
They were.
That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
I had a similar type experience. We do a film camp down in San Diego for autistic children of the military. And the film that they make with Joey Travolta, John's older brother, who's a special ed teacher and a filmmaker, they debut at the San Diego Film Festival. And last year, I'm going to be doing it again this year. Last year, when we did that red carpet, and those kids on that red carpet, with all the press and being interviewed and I kept saying to them, you're a celebrity. And they were like, yeah, I am. And it just, for them to feel that special is so precious, and so all kids need to feel significant.
Absolutely.
All people need to feel significant, right?
Right. They really do.
And clearly you made them feel special.
And now they had makeup, photography, dinner, and then did they then go to the prom?
Well, let me tell you, dinner went. So we had the 2 ABA therapists that were staged as servers, to help prolong the night, just to assist in it.
Now your beautiful girlfriend happens to be an ABA therapist.
Yes, she was heavily involved.
Tell us her name.
Her name is Summer.
And she, lovely lady, and I met her outside there, and she was heavily involved as well.
We wanted to make sure that this went perfectly.
Okay, great.
She was definitely heavily involved with everything.
I love how you thought of everything and had the servers be ABA trained, so that if something should go awry or amiss, it wasn't going to be a big shock. It wasn't going to be a waitress who didn't know how to handle it.
Right.
So there was a comfort zone built in. So they had this beautiful dinner.
So we made a special menu for them, so it wasn't so large. So we condensed it. So we wanted them to actually choose their drink, choose their entree, choose their salad. Step by step, as any normal family would have to experience a prom night like this.
Right.
So we did that, and like I said, the restaurant was packed because everybody wanted to see this, and so the food took a little bit longer to come out.
Right.
I anticipated this, so I brought in a magic person who did magic at the table for them for a little bit.
Nice.
And they loved it.
Okay.
And they were awesome. They waited about an hour for their food, and they were awesome. Give them a lot of credit. They just did so much. We're all just so proud of them, and it's the families that were there. They're just so happy, just gleaming with happiness and
pride.
Well, you set them up for success. And then they went on after the dinner to go to the prom at the California Science Center.
Yes.
And so I'm curious about, so this happened, 2 weeks ago?
This was about 2-3, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so afterwards, what have you heard back from the families and from the kids about the whole experience?
Well, Angie had asked her son Chris what his favorite part of prom was.
Right.
And he said dinner.
Yeah.
So,
of course.
Not prom, but
Chris, who's 17, Christopher Brady. And
so that's just awesome.
Okay. Do you have any special memories from the night? Like just any images or comments from the kids that just kind of have stuck with you? I'm sure you have many, but that might be putting you on the spot. I don't know.
There's so many. I think the biggest image I have is just watching the parents, and their faces and tears of joy.
Absolutely.
And even my mother was there because she was there with Boyd, and Boyd was sitting in the booth with her, and one of the reporters came up and asked her why she was crying, and she just said, it's just so beautiful. Boyd's going to be that age, one of these days, and we want to make sure that prom is for everybody.
Exactly. Well, it's a lovely, lovely message. We're all getting choked up here.
I know, we are.
But, it's not the only thing that Fullerton Cares does. This is just one of the things, but you have fundraisers. You talked with us during the break about your Mardi Gras that you do.
Golf tournaments, comedy nights, but Mardi Gras. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
Well, Mardi Gras started as a jazz fest that we wanted to do every year for Fat Tuesday because we're a New Orleans style restaurant.
Right.
So we take up the whole parking lot of the Fullerton train station area. That's where we're at. And fast forward 2 years down the line, and our regular Mardi Gras event turned into a Mardi Gras for Autism event. It was clear after that, with the support of my business partners, that this was the direction that we were going to go in. So now we have it each year. We attracted over 2,000 people last year, and it really is an inclusionary event. We set it up to be extremely fun and an event that would attract typical families, and what we want to do is we want these families to interact, families who are affected with autism and typical families, so they can see and be around and feel what autism is, hopefully educate their children about it, and just not make autism so taboo, and of course the ultimate goal is to achieve the anti-bullying.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, you're a remarkable guy, a remarkable dad, a remarkable business owner. Where can people go to find out more about Fullerton Cares?
You can go to www.fullertoncares.com.
Okay.
And you can also go to www.bourbonstreetfullerton.com.
Okay. Now let's talk, because you're a business owner and you've done such wonderful things. I want to know, what's the signature dish at the restaurant that if we come to Fullerton, we just have to have at your restaurant?
Oh, there's so many good ones. Well, you got to have the pork chop. That would be pork chop and ribs, but we also have a dish that we donate to the school districts. We donate 25% of that dish. Whoever orders it. It's our country fried steak and blue cornmeal waffles.
Aren't you
Belgian
a
waffles.
vegetarian? You might have to stick with the corn waffles.
No, so blue, did you say blue corn waffles?
Blue cornmeal Belgian waffles.
Wow,
that sounds good. I don't take it. There's not a low-calorie menu, but hey.
We have some.
Really?
But,
okay.
It's hard to get New Orleans-style food.
Yeah, it really is. That's
in
true.
A low-calorie
I think if you decide to go and eat New Orleans-style food at the Bourbon Street Bar and Grill, you just say, okay, I'm not dieting. I'll diet tomorrow,
That's
right?
You got a carpe diem every once in a while,
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And if people, you mentioned the website for the restaurant, but give it one more time if they want to know more about the restaurant.
www.bourbonstreetfullerton.com.
Okay. And they can come to Fullerton, California, and when they come to the restaurant, they can see you there. Yep. You're there on a regular basis.
And when is Mardi Gras?
I'm always there. It changes every year.
I know.
I believe this year it's in February.
Okay.
At the end of February.
Right.
But we'll definitely let you know.
All right. Well, we might be heading on down to Fullerton for Mardi Gras.
All right. That could be a very fun thing.
Could
to
be
do.
fun.
Be on location.
Yeah.
Lovely.
I want to thank you for everything you do for our children, their families, and the community. And as Shannon said, you're just a remarkable person, remarkable dad, and we're glad we have people like you out there.
Yeah.
No, it's my pleasure, and I believe that there's no other choice.
Okay, there you go.
All right. Well, thanks for coming today.
We're going to take a break and come back to close out the show, so stick with us after these messages.
Great.
Currently in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
It just has some gases.
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christy and Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable and recovery from autism is possible. Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We had a couple of comments that came in while we were meeting with Larry, a little bit before actually. Somebody suggested an older mom support, do a whole show idea on that, and I think we should.
Love
these
that.
days.
Love that. I know, because I'm always feeling pretty old when it comes to when I'm around these other moms.
And sometimes there's a different set of issues that come with that.
Yeah.
Because, not only would my child be tantruming, but I'd be having a hot flash. And that wasn't something that everybody could relate to.
When your house is not only buying diapers, but depends.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a way of cutting right to the chase, right? And then somebody else wanted to know, what is the name of the Disney Pass? It is the Guest Assistance Pass.
Yeah.
You go to Main Street, usually, depending on the location.
Office there, the main office at Disney World at Main Street. Disneyland.
And there's usually a place where they say guest relations, but it's inside the gate. So you get your tickets, you go in, you stand in line. It's the same place that you go to get your little, so if you're having a birthday, they'll give you a birthday pin, and you can pick up a phone and listen to Mickey Mouse say happy birthday. And they will say what kind of a pass do you want, and it's up to you what you want, because they have one for wheelchair and one for other. I would suggest, if you don't have a wheelchair, that you get the other.
Right.
And they'll ask you, why is it that you need this pass? You do not have to say autism, but you can say autism.
Yeah.
Usually what I say is, if he has sensory issues and if he's in a tight place with different issues going on and different smells and different people, there is the possibility, and because once at Disneyland he kicked a girl because he just reached maximum, So you don't have to make it too lengthy, and they'll ask how many people in your party. You can say up to 6.
Right.
And they ask you to sign it that you understand that it does not necessarily mean that you get on the ride quicker. And there you have it. But usually it does mean you get on the ride quicker. Not always, depends on the day, but not always. Okay, so we also had something that we wanted to share.
Yeah, I got this yesterday from Senator Steinberg, President Pro Temp of the Senate.
Who we really appreciate.
He's a rock star.
Yes.
He's a Democrat from Sacramento, and this is his last term in Congress. He issued the following statement regarding the governor's May revision of the California state budget. Overall, the May revision is a refreshing change. For the first time in 4 years, we no longer have to stare at enormous deficits and make agonizing decisions on which cuts will do the least harm to our children, to the poor, and to middle-class families. That's the politically correct thing to say, and it happens to be true. I agree we must aggressively pay down our state's debt and set aside money for a reserve. But there's a disappointing aspect to this proposal. It's important that we also begin making up for some of the damage done to tens of thousands of Californians. Unless the legislative analyst has a different conclusion, the governor proposes few, if any, resources to restore cuts made over the past few years to the courts and to health and human services, and specifically autism in there. The governor's local control funding formula is the right policy direction, but our serious concern about how it's accomplished remains. The concentration grants treat thousands of disadvantaged students unequally. It also fails to expand the proven success of career pathway programs, which can reduce dropout rates. And as the budget debate begins in earnest, I look forward to a deeper analysis of revenue projections in the coming week, while we continue to work with the governor on the best budget for California's economic recovery and its people. From Senator Steinberg, which is his concern is the children and young people with disabilities, with autism, and from economically disadvantaged families are not being left behind with these budget cuts. There are other ways to accomplish this, and we are with him on this, and we salute Senator Steinberg for being such a champion for our children.
Absolutely. We absolutely do. I want to remind everybody as we get here to the end of the show that this afternoon, if you're tuning in at 3 p.m. Pacific time, which would be, what, 5 p.m. Eastern time?
Yes.
I'm so bad at math. But anyway, there will be a webinar. Our regular scheduled feed will be interrupted. There will be a webinar that's being presented by Skills, and it is on relational frame therapy, which is a form of ABA, and it's going to be presented by Tom Szabo. He was one of the gentlemen who was here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders training everyone in acceptance commitment therapy that we've talked about and been so excited about it here. This is a really amazing webinar, and you can tune in and watch it and be asking questions in the same way that you ask here. It's a free opportunity to take part in that. So that's at 3 o'clock today Pacific time. Do the math for your area. Pacific time, it's 3 o'clock. Tom Szabo, relational frame therapy. Okay, we're almost out of time here, but Emily's going to cycle through some of the ways that you can get in touch with us here in the show. And we have a new intern for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And you have a new intern for Autism Care and Treatment Today. And she has just been working overtime. We've got a bunch of really exciting guests coming up.
We do. We've got, I think the show's booked for like the next couple of weeks.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and Carla Najera, who we brought in to help with our grants, because she's talking to the non-English speaking families. And she also is helping us set up our guests and helping us get the research.
Job.
So, you know, Carla, you're a rock star too. We love you.
And so we've got a lot of exciting things coming up.
And of course, Emily's a rock star, because I'm constantly saying, can you put this picture up of Wyatt and the kids? And I was sending her text last night, like, here's stuff from outdoor camp, and forgot this, forgot this.
Emily is like Martha Stewart and MacGyver put together with extra skills.
Emily keeps us on track here.
Yes,
that's who we're always, although I couldn't hear Emily today. You had to tell me what Emily was saying.
It's not her, though. It's the earpiece.
Yeah, it's not Emily. Emily never fails.
No, Emily never fails. We have equipment failure sometimes. Anyway, we're out of time. I'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m.
And I'll be back next Wednesday to do the show with you.
Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me.
There you go. Bye for now.
Bye.